I have probed the depths of literature, but my friend Mark remembers only the one poem I ever wrote, the one called Plop, and it goes something like this. Plop, plop, plop. At nights, I reach right in and thrust my hand deep into the fiery furnace of metaphor, and I grab the human condition, and I tear the words from the sky. I am king of ink, monarch of the pen, my nib moving faster and faster as my fingers grip the shaft of the biro, spilling onto the page beauteous visions, truth, honesty, existential angst, and what it means to be alive. And yet, Mark's favourite poem of mine is Plop, Plop, Plop. Hello there. That was just a little poem there for you. And why? Because I'm a poet. That's my label, poet. Ink-stained fingers, pockets full of rejection slips and no firm plans for a Saturday night. Poet. But I tell you, it's the perfect career choice for me. Probably because of my crippling fear of success. But I'm a poet. That's my label. And at school, I had a different kind of label. And that was dyslexic, closeted, aircraft-obsessed nerd. Which meant I knew everything about civil aviation, apart from how to spell it. Dyslexic, closeted, aircraft-obsessed nerd. But I wouldn't have said boo to a goose. That's the kind of kid I was. And anyway, I grew up on a council estate, so there weren't no gooses to say boo to. In fact, I'm not even sure I know what a goose is. I know what a duck is, just not a goose. If anyone's got a picture of a goose, maybe they can show me one day and I'll have a gander. Dyslexic, closeted, aircraft-obsessed nerd. But I had back then, and I've still got now, another label. And that's my name. I often wonder if my life would have been any different if I'd had a more exciting name. Unlike me, this poem is called Zach. I wear my name like a bad haircut. And Lord knows I've had plenty of those, like the curtains style I had in the 90s. My name now so passé as to be instantly beiged, and people tend to sidle away when they discover that my name is not Zach. Oh, how I'd love to be called Zach. And I'd act like a Zach and smile like a Zach, because like every Zach I'd have a witty comeback. Because Zacks are known for their snapback caps, super dry backpacks, flapjack snacks and witty comebacks, and that blank, blank Zack look when they discover that my name is not Zach, it's Robert. And we'd hang around in our Converse All-Stars and our Nike shorts imploring people to just do it. Just do what? Whatever, man, because that's what Zacks do. Hang around with our fellow Zacks in a Zack-on-Zack crew and hit the sacks with other Zacks and talk about our ironic podcasts. And being with us would be such a pleasure that we'd be able to charge a Zack tax, because that's the tactic of every Zack. With our winning smile, we'd reach for the moon, but someone would give us the sun, because that's much more fun. And anyway, we deserve it because our name is Zack. This is the truth. It ain't no quackery. The things we pick up, this mental knick-knackery of being called Zachary. So sit back and see. Once you've been with a Zack, you can't go back. Please, let me in, Zacks. Oh, how I'd love to be called Zack, a name I take pride in every time I say it, even though it's ever so slightly onomatopoeic, with its implications of something happening really, really fast. Then life would be different and more of a laugh because I'd be called Zack. But instead I'm called Robert. I've never been able to successfully rock a hoodie. I've never been able to pull off a baseball cap. There's a gaping chasm between fashion and the freakish affectations of a middle-aged wanker who's trying too hard, over which the name Zack is a bridge, a gaping crevasse of existentialist doom, and I've fallen right in. I've fallen right in, weighed down with the weight of being called Robert. And the Zacks look back. The Zacks look back. The Zacks look back. Hey, shall we save him? Who? I don't know. Wasn't there someone here just now? So, as a kid, I wasn't that interested in poetry, though my teachers really did try. One day, we were read a poem by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and this was followed by a discussion on metre and metaphor and imagery, and the teacher asked if anyone had any questions, and I put up my hand and I said yes. What the hell kind of middle name is Bysshe? We then had to write shape poems, in which the text of the poem was laid out on the page in the form of a shape. The teacher took one look at mine and said, "What the hell's that?" And I said, "Well, it's in the shape of a poem." So I don't know how I managed to get a career in poetry. I suppose at some point the dandruff just becomes so bad you think you might as well go the whole hog and become a poet. Pen some odes. Ode to the seasons. Ode to human nature. Ode to my landlord, 3 months' rent because there's no money in poetry. And there's something that people say when they discover I'm a poet, and I tell you what, it's really annoying, and that's what this next poem is all about. The trouble with being a poet, apart from the lack of recognition, the very limited chance of success, the lack of respect from friends and colleagues, the bad wardrobe, the bad teeth, the jealousy, the bitterness, the fact I still use imperial measurements so none of my poems have got metre. The trouble with being a poet is, anytime something happens, somebody always says, "You should write a poem about that." "The bus driver gave me a funny look. You should write a poem about that." "It's so annoying when you get a Jersey 50p in your change. You should write a poem about that." "It's a shame my name isn't Zack. You should write a poem about that." "I already have." "Well then, write another one." "You should write a poem about that. It's all I hear sometimes." "You should write a poem about that." "About what?" "About that misshapen turnip over there. Looks like a constipated mallard. A poem. Go on, write one." My neighbour didn't trust the recipe for boiling pasta. Mind you, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt. You should write a poem about that. My uncle's chiropodist gets free food by hanging around McDonald's in a delivery uniform. You should write a poem about that. How come the song 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover only mentions about 6? You should write a poem about that. Oi, you should write a poem about that. Why is it called instant coffee? You've still got to boil the kettle. You should write a poem about that. If a sperm whale had eyebrows, each one would be as big as an ironing board. You should write a poem about that. A friend told his mate that he was rubbish at making moisturiser. All right, he said, no need to rub it in. You should write a poem about that. If you go to the Arctic and have an ice cream, does it taste warm? You should write a poem about that. You really should. Can you generate a QR code by taking a picture of TV static? You should write a poem about that. Why is it called renewable energy? Once you've used it, it's gone. You should write a poem about that. Oh my God, I just farted. You should write a poem about that. You should write a poem about that. You should write a poem about that. One day, I finally snapped and I said to my friend, don't you see how annoying it is that any jape, wordplay, accident, mistake, actual or fake anecdote, or incredibly mild observation of everyday life is immediately translated as the basis for some instantly forgettable half-assed attempt at a comedy poem, which absolutely nobody would ever find remotely amusing? To which my friend just looked at me blankly and said, you should write a poem about that. And this was it. So, I don't know how I managed to make a career in poetry. I've travelled up and down this country and I've met and worked with some amazing people. Like that time I was poet in residence for a charity which housed out-of-work former poets in residence. Or that time I inadvertently emptied a poetry venue by performing a poem called Fire, Fire, Everyone Out. But in spite of all of this, I've always had this sense of imposter syndrome. You see, culture wasn't very important where I grew up. Self-expression was just a well-timed belch during a mathematics lesson. The closest thing we had to a Booker Prize-winning work of fiction was the local bus company timetable. In fact, the school motto was Si Momentum Pompus Maximus, which roughly translates as, if it moves, hump it. But poetry was for other people. I said to a friend of mine that I didn't feel like a poet, that I was thinking of giving up. And he said, Robert, why now? Why this exact moment? Why not years ago? A friend of mine caught a train from Yeovil to Basingstoke and she sat down and she worked on a poem, and the train manager came along and she took an interest and suggested one or two changes, and then that poem was shortlisted for the forward prize. Eagerly excited, I caught the same train from Yeovil to Basingstoke and I sat down and I worked on a poem, and sure enough the train manager came over and she took an interest and suggested one or two changes, and then that poem helped me come joint 19th at the Cleethorpes Poetry Slam. Why didn't she have the same effect on me? I asked my friend. And she replied, well, she'd been in first class. They say that destiny can come calling at the weirdest moments. In fact, I just got off a train and I was in the supermarket on the way home looking for something for dinner, and I was badly in need of a wee. You don't know me, the voice on the phone said. He sounded like he wanted something. He sounded like he knew I wanted something. Sustained and all-consuming fame, as well as a wee. I've been watching some of your videos online. Funny stuff. Especially the beard poem. Beards cracks me up. You do write them yourself, don't you? Yes. Well, that makes it even more amazing. Anyway, we were wondering, if you'd like to appear on Britain's Not Without Talent, because that's definitely the name of the TV programme. Really? Yes, and come up to London and be filmed at that theatre. Now, I'm not going to tell you the name of the theatre, but it's the one where they used to film Saturday Night at the London Palladium. Really? Yes. And you'll probably be on TV. In fact, you almost certainly will because of the beard poem. Beards, ha ha, gets me every time. And you'll be interviewed by Ant and Dom. Dick and Deck, wow. No, Ant and Dom. Oh yes, I always get those confused. Yes, I'm interested. Because I wasn't thinking about deep humiliation at this point, or being made a fool on national television in front of an audience of millions, a prime-time crash-and-burn snippet in between the dancers and the acrobats, or walking out on stage and forgetting the first line of my poem, my spoken word career in ruins, all for the sake of a couple of minutes of cheap entertainment which would leave a stain on my soul for the rest of my life. Didn't even cross my mind. In fact, the only thing I cared about was performing at the theatre where they filmed Saturday Night at the London Palladium. Well, that and having a wee. Great, he said. I'll send you a couple of emails. Oh, and just one more thing, okay? It might not happen. They might not use the footage, so don't tell anyone, okay? Don't tell a soul. I finished the phone call, paid for my shopping, went home and had a wee, and then I told absolutely everyone. Fame is the thing I want, it's really, really cool. A house with the shower room and the swimming pool. A first class upgrade every time I'm on a plane. You love me not for who I am, just only for my fame. Fame is really excellent, you'll see me on the news, jetting off on holiday to an island with Tom Cruise. Whenever I am on the street, people shout my name. You love me not for who I am, just only for my fame. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. You love me not for who I am, just only for my fame. Out last night with poet Pam Ayres, I came over all seductive. I could have been home making tiddlywinks, which I suppose is counterproductive. In the pub with Lady Gaga, she said, I'll buy a round. Everyone wants a piece of me, there's enough to go around. Fame is really excellent, I love this life I picked. I didn't get on with my chiropractor, then something just clicked. Ed Sheeran asked for a selfie, so I charged him £30. Everyone wants a piece of me, there's enough to go around. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Everyone wants a piece of me, there's enough to go around. I want to be so famous that I end up with my own stalker. Discussing Mars and Kit Kat bars, I suppose, is a sweet talker. Stormzy phoned me up and he asks when I'm next free. Whenever I've recovered from this maelstrom of ennui. I don't know who I am anymore, life's not as fun as I thought. I don't want to go and get me out of here, though my manager thinks I ought. Spread the spark of life and joy on meaningless ITV. Whenever I've recovered from this maelstrom of ennui, I needed some advice. So I watched a documentary interview with playwright Alan Bennett, and he had these solemn and philosophical words to say on the subject of fame. He said, plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. Plop, plop, funka, funka, dippity, doppity, poo. You love me not for who I am, you love me not for who I am, you love me not for who I am, but only for my fame. Is this the future dancing, writhing like a snake? Is this the future mesmerising me? Or am I about to make a mistake? Well, spoiler alert, but yes, and we'll get to that later. You see, the thing I was thinking a lot about during this time was regret. To me, there's nothing sadder than unfulfilled potential. The saddest thing that ever happened to my great uncle, a botanist. And he had this rare plant that flowered once for 2 days every 50 years. And for the whole of his adult life, he looked after this plant, watered it, fed it, gave it just the right amount of love and life. And the bloody thing flowered while he was on a long weekend in Worthing. By this stage, I'd been performing poetry for about 15 years or so. Poems of nuance and texture and depth. But all people seemed to remember was the beard poem. Hey Robert, they'd say, do the beard poem, but I want to do something else. No, do the beard poem. We want the beard poem, the beard poem. Well, Britons not without talent wanted the beard poem. Fine, if that's what they wanted, then that's what I would give them. And my performance would look something like this. Hello there, my name is Robert Garnham, Professor of Whimsy. And when I was writing this poem, I was thinking about superheroes and what kind of powers I'd have if I was a superhero. And the only way I can see it, there's only 2 things I'm any good at. Number 1, I can always tell when the vacuum cleaner bag is full. Number 2, I can always spot somebody with a beard, and there's a cracker of one just over there. Beards make me really envious, and that's what this poem is all about. Doesn't have a title yet, it's just called Poem. I've always wanted a beard, just never had the time to grow one. Whenever I see them, I get this strange feeling inside of deep inadequacy. I want a beard just like this gentleman's got. I like the cut of his jib, beardy, beardy man. How lucky you are. Chinny chin chin keeps tickling while kissing. Probably. I went to the barber and I said, give me a beard, good man, and make it a big bushy one, like I am an old grizzled trawlerman. Here's a Pritt stick. Now sweep up the floor and stick it on my chin. There's a good fellow. It fell off when I was halfway round Lidl's. Last night I sat in envy at the annual beard competition. It was won by a geography teacher whose beard looked like 2 ferret-shaped sideburns mating while a badger-shaped moustache hid in the rhododendrons and took photos. I saw a man in the pub with a beard, and his friend had a beard, and their dog had a beard, and the barman had a beard, and the barman said through his beard, what would you like? And I said, a beard. And the barman said I was weird. So I had an apple and raspberry J2O. I can't look at a goat. I hate the way they gloat with their nanny goat, billy goat, beard, beard, unwarranted, goatee, goatee, sprout, sprout, stroke it, big boy. I went to the circus and I saw a beard tamer cracking his whip, beard tamer cracking his whip, beard tamer, pass me a razor, stay there, cutting them down into very, very, very long sideburns. If I had a beard, I'd dip the end in chocolate sauce and draw crazy patterns on your smooth, bare chest, whispering, growl for me, growl for your lover man, growl like a tiger, you sexed up beast of a man, which would probably startle the other people on the bus. I want to have a beard so big it might have to be bioengineered. Fuzzy, fuzzy, chin scratch, scrunch up, feel it. Go on, put your hand here and feel it. Thank you. So I had lots of phone calls and Zoom meetings with the producers over the next few weeks. And they were all young and enthusiastic. And they said that the beard poem was the funniest thing they'd ever seen, ever. And I started to believe them. One of the researchers had a beard and I pointed out that it was rather a good one, and he laughed and said, "Ha ha ha, just like the poem." "Yes," I said, "just like the poem." We then had to decide what I was going to wear. Stripes were out, apparently, because stripes do something weird to a TV screen. No logos, no slogans, no brand names, no endorsements. No ankle bracelets. Ankle bracelets, I asked. Ankle bracelets. Apparently, both Ant and Dom have a phobia of ankle bracelets. Well, that's weird. So we settled on more or less what I'm wearing now, and I took a couple of photos and sent them off, and then I had to wait. And a very nervous couple of weeks of rehearsing went past. On a cold January evening, I caught a train from Devon to London. I was looking for some sense of magic in the air, a barely perceptible tingle, as if fortune were tickling my conscience and smoothing the way to a stardust future. But the train was cold, and dinner was a chicken tikka pasty I bought from the convenience store next to the station. Oh, it was disgusting. The countryside was bathed in darkness. I could barely make out beyond my own reflection tiny villages in the middle of nowhere, clusters of lights, lonely cow barns lit up against the frost, and I thought, do any of these people also dream of everlasting fame? It was late by the time I finally reached London. There is this city where dreams come true, but more's the pity they seldom do. With me it's different. I can feel it deep down. I'm gonna make my mark on the soul of this town. If fame is a pie, then mine's already baking. London is mine for the taking. The things that I heard, the things that were yelled, the sights that I saw, the things that I smelled. One moment it's gleaming, the next it's obscene. A tourist from Denver asked if I was the Queen. I don't know what kind of insinuation he was making. London is mine for the taking. I ride the tube like the locals do, smile at the commuters and say, "How do you do? What's the next stop? I can't hear a sound. I'll have to wait for the conductor to pop round." That's how you do it. That's using your loaf. Arsenal or Spurs, I support them both. My eyes were watering. I let out a sob. "Are you crying?" someone asked. I said, "No, it's the smog. I have a joy deep down that I'm definitely not faking. London is mine for the taking." I met a big cockney who thought he was hard. I flashed him a smile. He flashed his Oyster card. This city of fortune, this city of chance, of life sublime in an endless dance of whirling emotion and money and fame. You know what it's called, but I'll tell you its name. A tube train passes and the ground starts shaking. London is mine. This city is mine. London is mine for the taking. I wrote that poem in Wolverhampton. The next morning, I was up early and off to the hotel where the contestants would be amassed before being bussed over to the actual theatre. On arrival, I was greeted by a young man wearing a Britain's Not Without Talent t-shirt. "Is this what you're wearing?" he asked. "Sure is." He called over another young man in a Britain's Not Without Talent t-shirt. "We're going to have to speak to one of the producers," he said. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "Well, we'll go and find out." They came back and they looked me up and down again and they said, "It's your shoes. You're wearing different shoes to the pictures that you sent us. You're wearing Converse All-Stars. There's a logo on the sides. The camera probably won't pick it up. We'll just have to keep the cameraman away from your feet. Oh, and just one more thing. No ankle bracelets?" "No," I replied. "No ankle bracelets." And with that, I was let in. And thence into a cornucopia of fakery, of glitzy sequin logos, tinsel-covered chair legs, gold-embossed paint, disco lights, lasers flashing and TV cameras everywhere. And then the other contestants started to come in. There were jugglers, fire breathers, a young man in a spangly one-piece suit with his mother in tow. She sat down and began sewing errant sequins back onto his cape. A unicycling monk, a Chinese male voice choir, all in matching tuxedos, and me, a poet, a flipping poet. So here they are, the hopeful, sequin dreams and face paint schemes, and a yearning for whatever might lift them from the 9-to-5 drudgery. You can see it in their eyes, the excitement. For this is their literal day of reckoning. Fame and fortune are beckoning, a tinsel moment in a life of grey, a chance to shine and dream no more. If only they knew it was just a game, these tortured fools with hopes of fame. A plastic sheen hiding the humanity beneath, nervous fake smiles and white teeth. But you can sense it, the hunger. And what exactly do we have here? We have Jenny, the yodeling librarian. Edwin, the fire eater from Taunton with the world's most dangerous hiccups. A man who looked uncannily like the late Cliff Mitchell-Moore. How is that even a talent? I could do that if I looked like the late Cliff Mitchell-Moore. Phil, the psychic bus driver. He had no idea how he was going to get on. Mr. Lister, the barista from Bicester, who was a performance embroiderer, whatever the hell that is. Bill, a man who sold himself to become an opera singer. He was a tenor. Mark, who can armpit squelch fart the theme tune to Match of the Day, which he learned to do in between shifts at the funeral parlour. Felicity Fanshawe, the tap dancer, who unbeknown to her had made her downstairs neighbour's life a living hell for 3 years because he was a Morse code operator. And Ruth McKinley, the Cardiff goat juggler. All hope to navigate this showbiz labyrinth around whose spiky corners the fickle nature of public opinion waits to jump out with either a hug or the jab of complete indifference. Instagram memes and hashtags of cruelty, or worse, the ability to be forgotten entirely. Mr. Garnham, would you follow me, please? It felt like a hospital, the campest hospital in the world, St. Liberace's, and I was there for ego enhancement surgery. I was taken to a side room and told to sit in front of a huge big camera. Oh, don't worry about that huge big camera, they said. Pretend it's not there, that huge big camera. Now all we need you to do is look into that huge big camera and tell the millions who'll be watching on TV exactly who you are and what you do. Okay? Action. Hello there. My name is Robert Garnham and I'm a comedy performance poet. Cut! That was brilliant. That was fantastic. That was the best we've seen yet. Just one small thing though. Could you not say the word comedy? Okay? Brilliant. We'll go again. Action. Hello there. My name is Robert Garnham and I'm a performance poet. Cut! That was fantastic. That was brilliant. Oh, you've done that before, we can tell. Just one little thing though. Could you not say the word performance? Okay? We'll go again. Action. Hello there. My name is Robert Garnham and I'm a poet. Cut! That was brilliant. That was fantastic. That was the best introduction in the history of television ever. Just one small thing though. We understand you work part-time in a shop. So could you just say that you work in retail? Okay? Oh, and if anyone asks, anyone at all, you work in retail. Okay? Action. Hello there. My name is Robert Garnham and I work in retail. I was next taken to another side room, which had been dressed to resemble backstage at the actual theatre. A young man in a Britain's Not Without Talent t-shirt explained that the real backstage area was too small for filming, so they created this, a fake backstage area, which they called the reality zone. The fake backstage area is called the reality zone. Yes, not even ironically. No, silly, isn't it? Now, could you lean against this pretend box of lighting equipment and look nervous for the cameras? I did as I was asked, and I thought I did a good job of looking nervous for the cameras. And then he said, I understand you're a poet. No, I work in retail. Yes, but you're here doing poetry, aren't you? Could you, here we go, could you take this notebook and this pen and could you pretend to write something for us? Could you do that? And could you look nervous while you're writing? And and also, could you give the end of the pen a good chew every now and then? Okay? Action. Once again, I thought I did a good job of looking nervous for the cameras. And he said it was brilliant. It was excellent. It was faberanza. This truth comes unblemished and without ulterior motive, but we've never met anyone more talented than you. Talent oozes from your psyche. Talent cascades from your brain. You've literally got talent coming out of your ears. Someone closed that window. That's talent you can smell. I've told you 1,000,000 times, and that's no exaggeration. Everything you do is faberanza. Oh my God, you exist in a swirl of genius, the likes of which would make Lady Gaga herself decide to pack it all in and become a dental hygienist. Everything you do is faberanza. If entertainment were a zoo, then you'd be the tiger. Grrr. Oh my God, you just broken the talentometer and we haven't even turned it on yet. I told my aunt about your genius and she spontaneously combusted. Mind you, she was on a train at the time and the announcer had just said, take care as you alight. You should write a poem about that. Everything you do is faberanza. I'm not telling porkies, but you got it, big boy, and you flaunt it. Am I dreaming? Do I need waking up? Watch as I hit myself over the head with this frying pan. clung. Oh my God, the last time I was this shocked, I was working as a train manager and I got struck by lightning. Mind you, I was a conductor. Everything you do is fabaranza. Alexa, why is this man such a genius? I told my cousin's pony about how wonderful you are and he's written a little song for you, but he can't perform it for us because he's a little horse. Everything you do is fabaranza. Ooh, beep, 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 beep. That's a genius detector and it's honed in on you, big boy. If being a genius was a crime, then it's a fair cop, gov. Slam on the cuffs. Everything you do is fabaranza. Your poems can change the world, my friend, make a king feel like a commoner. You kill so much with your poems on stage, they better come with their own coroner. Oh my God, I think I'll just explode. I better stand outside in the corridor. Someone dial 999 because you set the world on fire. I am no liar. Everything you do is fabaranza. You really are the best we've ever seen. Now tell me again, what was your name? Sometimes destiny blows on the wind. Sometimes destiny blows a raspberry. I was on the minibus from the hotel to the actual theatre and I'd become aware of two things. Number one, I was starting to get a bit of a stomach ache. Must have been that chicken tikka pasty from the night before. And number two, I was so nervous that my voice was now a barely audible squeak. We arrived at the theatre, and at the appointed time I was taken from a corridor to the actual backstage area and told once again to look nervous for the cameraman. Oh, and by the way, if anyone asks, anyone at all, you work in retail. Okay, anything else? Yes, they might ask what you would do with the money in case you won. The producers are getting bored of all the same old answers. Could you try and say something interesting? Well, what about, I really hope I win so I can start a museum of spatulas? Yes, that's good. Say that. Yet again, I thought I did a good impression of looking nervous for the cameraman. But then the cameraman asked me to walk around a bit, so I walked around in little circles, looking nervous. But then I felt my trousers start to fall down, so I hoiked them up, because by now it felt so natural to be in front of the cameras. It felt entirely normal to hoik up my trousers, and who knows, in this modern age, it might go on to become a meme. Okay. They're ready for you now. Walk around that corner and you'll see Ant and Dom. I took a deep breath and I walked around the corner and I saw Ant and Dom waiting expectantly, and then someone yelled, hold it, cut, come back. Is there a problem? I asked. It's Simon Dowell. He's gone to the toilet. Well, he must have been having a dump or something, because it seemed like forever just standing there. And my hopes and dreams flashed before my eyes. Bigger gigs, a slightly more elevated name for myself, less flyering at the Edinburgh Fringe. If performance poetry was a community akin to, say, I don't know, soap opera TV characters, then I would be Bouncer the dog from Neighbours. This was my chance to hit the big time. So, no pressure then. All right, we're ready to roll again. Go around the corner and speak to Ant and Dom. And to be honest, everything after this was a bit of a blur. About 10 years ago, I had an operation on a very delicate part of my anatomy, and that meant a full day at the hospital. And just before the operation, they asked me to count from 1 to 10. And I remember thinking, oh, that's easy. I can do that. I've counted from 1 to 10 a few times in my life. And the next thing I knew, it was several hours later, and I was in a lot of pain. And that's kind of what this felt like. To wake up a few hours later with a very delicate part of me trampled on and hugely disfigured. So, what do I remember? I remember Ant and or Dom asking would I be singing for them. And I replied with something glib like, oh, I'm going to be performing a poem. And Ant and or Dom replying, oh, well, the world needs more poetry. I then remember walking out on stage, eager to tell Simon Dowell about the Museum of Spatulas and the fact I worked in retail. But instead, the first thing Simon Dowell said to me was, I hear you come from Devon. What is it with you Devon people hating us with second homes? Because, you know, that was suddenly relevant. He then asked what had brought me here to this point. And I replied, oh, I came up last night on the train. And he put his head in his hands and the audience laughed. And I thought, oh, geez, this ain't going so well. And spoiler alert, that was the only part of my performance they actually put on the TV. I then started my performance. Hello, my name is Robert Garnham, Professor of Whimsy. And when I was writing this poem, I was thinking about superheroes. Simon Dowell had already buzzed, and I'd only just started the preamble. And what kind of powers I'd have if I was a superhero. And the only way I can see it, there's only two things I'm any good at. Number one, I can always tell when the vacuum cleaner bag is full. Number two, I can always spot somebody with a beard. Some other bastard had buzzed. Beards make me really envious, and that's what this poem is all about. Doesn't have a title yet, it's just called Poem. Now the audience laughed at this stage, and I thought, oh, okay then. That's not too bad. If they can laugh at one of the least funny parts of my whole performance, maybe it won't be so bad after all. I started the poem. I've always wanted a beard. Just never had the time to grow one. Whenever I see them, I get this strange feeling inside of deep inadequacy. I want a beard just like this gentleman's got. Fame is the thing I want, it's really, really cool. Everything you do is fabaranza. So that was it. Simon Dowell leaned into the other judges. Yes? No? Maybe? Maybe not? And I thought, maybe what? Do a different poem? Start again from scratch? If I'd been any braver, I'd have asked if they'd like to hear the whole thing, you know, like responsible, respectable adults, but they'd already said no. And then Amanda, whatever she's called, said, well, you seem like a really nice person, which certainly cheered me up. And then Daniel Balliams said, why don't you just give up poetry? I think he regretted saying this. I mean, apart from anything else, it just wasn't very funny. Why don't you just give up poetry? He immediately started backtracking. Why don't you just give up poetry? I mean, as far as he knew, I wasn't a performance poet with 15 years experience. I worked in retail. Why don't you just give up poetry? But those words of his, they stayed in my head. Why don't you just give up poetry? What a knob. I walked off stage and I thanked the judges, and Ant and or Dom pointed in the direction that I should take, and within seconds I was back in the corridor and somebody was removing the mic. Stay here a bit, a young man in a Britain's Not Without Talent t-shirt said. Or see if the director needs you. I was asked to wait in a side room where the security guards and the bouncers were having their dinner. Microwave lasagna. They'd been watching the show on a little monitor, and they said that from where they were sitting, they rather liked the idea of a beard poem, and they'd like to hear the whole thing, but hey, perhaps they were just being nice. But then the man in the Britain's Not Without Talent t-shirt came back and said, no, they finished with you now. The exit is just down there, just to the right. Within seconds, I was back out on the streets of wintertime London. Your neon is brash, but a joke to me. It laughs at the man I wanted to be. Fairy lights reflected on damp city streets, there's a chill in the air. A lonely soul exposed as a fool in a blaze of promise which seems so cruel. There's an ache in my heart where aspiration once lived. Eerie shadows flit with insolent spite. Your teeming lanes are awash with dreams, like the hand which held the promise obscene of fame and fortune, which it crushed like a fist, having thrown the spear of hope, but it missed, oh how it missed. How silly to believe it could happen to one whose obvious deficiencies are exposed and undone. The fabric of art as ego defined in a throwaway moment on TV prime time. A million souls want to live forever, at mercy to fate and calamitous weather, whose thunderclaps stupid and winds blow forth, dreams dying in doorways amid downpour drips. Your neon is brash, but a joke for all except those set up for a rise but no fall, and a modicum of luck, and a soupçon of fate. But I'll show you yet. Just stay there. Just you wait. I caught the tube back to Earl's Court and went to a burger restaurant for dinner. Sat down and realised I was still wearing my Britain's Not Without Talent wristband. I looked around to make sure nobody had noticed, and then I slid it up under the sleeve of my jacket. The next morning I caught the train back to Devon. How did I feel? Well, kind of exuberant, kind of uplifted, kind of glad it had happened. Kind of excited that these things were possible, kind of excited that they should happen to me. Kind of a bit fed up that they hadn't listened to the whole poem. But on the whole, kind of okay about everything, apart from the words of Daniel Balliams with his "Why don't you just give up poetry?" That afternoon I did the exact opposite, and I wrote this last poem. I was almost famous once. Well, actually, nowhere near it. But it sounds good, and it's a great way to start a poem. Me, famous? I know Elton John, but then again, who is? Well, obviously, Elton John. I had a little adventure, you see, undertaken more out of curiosity. Like an illness which I managed not to catch, the perfect antidote to which is obviously the expression, "Hello, I'm a poet." But it got me thinking, was it really so wrong to hope? The whole thing was a lot like sex. The excitement, the build-up, the hours of frantic rehearsal, only to be told 20 seconds in by the person you're doing it at, "I think we better call it a day." Story of my life. But was it really so wrong to hope? It's weird the way things go. One moment I'm on stage at the London Palladium, the next I'm back at work, mopping up sick, when my name could have been added to that prestigious list of former winners like, oh, to be honest, I can't think of any. I think one of them was a dog. But was it really so wrong to hope? And that celebrity who said, "Why don't you just give up poetry?" I should have taken off my left shoe and hurled it at his massive face. He's a donkey-breathed weasel shagger. He's a sneaky, flaky and foul, obnoxious snot puddle. He's a smug and insidious platform of misery. He's a grinning bollocks. He's a prehistoric, sneer-lipped, patronising scumbucket. I don't like him very much, but was it really so wrong to hope? I think I just went a little bit crazy there for a bit. Imagined a version of myself who doesn't exist, like when I was a kid and I invented a superhero called Woodlouse Boy, who was bitten by a radioactive woodlouse and, well, the rest just writes itself, really. I wish I was more like Woodlouse Boy, curled up in a defensive ball against the onslaught of fame, but here it comes again, the same refrain. Was it really so wrong to hope? Interviews and endorsements, cameramen and wine, dark glasses hiding tired eyes, living on Hollywood time, plans, fans illustrious, adrenaline as a fuel, probing and vacuous, the epitome of cool. I didn't become famous for the fame. I didn't become famous for the money. I didn't become famous for the sex. I just didn't become famous. But was it really so wrong? Was it really so wrong? Was it really so wrong to hope?